Welcome everyone back to another episode of Q&A with Sharon's son George. I was my mother's caregiver after she was diagnosed with Parkinson's disease. Unfortunately, she passed on 1/1/2020, but we started together for Sharon.com in her memory. Today's guest is somebody I consider close, even though we're so literally far, literally from another world or country, and she just means a lot to me personally. I don't know if she knows, but I've been focusing the last 6 shows on issues such as females, women and Parkinson's, because to me it's something that needs to be brought to light a lot more. And it's such an important issue to break any of the stigma or the misconceptions like Parkinson's is an elderly man disease, which is not true in my view anymore. So I just want to welcome Richelle and thank you for your advocacy around the world, not just in the US, but maybe you can tell us a little bit about your background and where you're actually calling in from today.
Yeah, well, thanks very much, George. It's an honor to be here
Thank
on
you.
Together for Sharon, in honor of your mum. So I'm based in Dublin, Ireland. So 5 hours time away, but a lot further distance away. And I'm here with you because I was diagnosed with young onset Parkinson's disease 7 years ago now, when I was 3 months pregnant with my daughter.
Oh.
Well, actually, it was after she was born. I picked up the symptoms when I was 3 months pregnant with her.
Well, yeah, I mean, I love your journey, and it's so inspiring too to see how you speak out and step up around the world. I'm always seeing such incredible literature and also kind of higher level writing, which is also impressive. I have a background, as you might know, is in law enforcement, but also a lawyer and PhD. So I always get excited to see a lot of your work because it is such scholarly research and publishable too, which is beautiful. Everyone thinks I'm Irish, just so you know. I'm not. Everyone, whenever I'm 6'2" and I walk around and I don't, I probably have some background. Maybe we're probably all family, literally. So you never know.
Yeah, well, you look like you have a bit of ginger in you there. So your mum looks like she had a bit of ginger there in that photo.
I'm proud of it. We want to start a ginger show actually for Parkinson. I've
But
spoken to.
do you do know that actually people who are redheads have a higher risk of having
Oh,
Parkinson's? So
oh,
it's actually one of our risk factors.
wow. Yeah, I'm
Lovely.
gonna have to look more into that. I mean, I actually interviewed a few incredible movement disorder experts, but I was shocked when I found out your actual dry cleaning could cause Parkinson's. And as we were talking, I was thinking about how to remove the shirt and to burn it off the show, but it didn't happen. But anyway,
Yeah.
but I appreciate
Unfortunately,
it.
we kind of have to live, and if we sort of live in fear of everything around us, we're never going to just get on with life. So yeah, we kind of have to, I think, balance the research with the reality of, the lives we live as well.
No, I agree. And I think what you do, though, is very important because you're also bringing some important issues to the table that I think the world needs to be more aware of. Maybe we can get right into some of the important areas, such as women and like what they deal with Parkinson's. I was fascinated. I've actually had 2 women in just the last week who were pregnant while they had Parkinson's. And that, to me, I don't know, I like to look for areas like that there's not much, not just research, but talking about. And I was shocked. So I'm really so excited again to have you on to talk about some of the issues of females. Obviously, I'm not one, but I love you all, and whether you're my sister or my wife here or my family around the world. This is such an important topic. So maybe you can talk us a little through some of the most important topics in females who have Parkinson's, and I'm gonna actually share one of the most important things in one moment, which is what you're working on also presently.
Yeah. So I mean, basically, this all started from, I suppose, my own journey, as I say, with picking up my Parkinson's symptoms when I was 3 months pregnant with my daughter. And then I wasn't officially diagnosed until she was born, and I'd finished breastfeeding, because you can't have a DAT scan to, confirm Parkinson's, because, the consultant felt that I was too young to have Parkinson's. My symptoms were very mild. Literally, it was micrographia, problems with small handwriting was my main issue, and a bit of an aching shoulder. So I, was put through a brain scan and a trapped nerve test, and they came back negative. And then, as I say, I had to wait until she was born and breastfed, because you can't have a DAT scan when you're pregnant or when you're breastfeeding. So that is a big issue in terms of, the fact that I had to wait all through my pregnancy and wait until my daughter was finished breastfeeding, which was 6 months later, 7 months later, to finally get a diagnosis of Parkinson's. So it meant that I, couldn't be on any medication or any intervention. So that's definitely something that, needs to be addressed, because, for example, I think there are now some potential tests, skin tests that could be done to indicate whether you have Parkinson's, and perhaps they could be used in pregnant women rather than having to delay a DAT scan. I suppose then after my daughter was born and I started menstruating again, I noticed that my Parkinson's symptoms were worse the week before my menstrual bleed. And when I was at the World Parkinson Congress, I met a number of young onset women, and we sort of became friends and connected through the internet and through social media. And I noticed a lot of them were mentioning the same problem. So what I did was put together a survey with the help of my two good co-founders of the Women's Parkinson's Project, Kat Hill and Therese Pathy, and we disseminated it through the PD Avengers. And it was a survey about, asking women when they were experiencing the same issue as myself, and Sri experienced the same thing. And the survey was of roughly about 240 women around the world, and 80% of them pretty much reported the same problem, that their symptoms got worse the week before their menstrual bleed, and 50% the week during their menstrual bleed. So this obviously, was quite astounding that there was such a high level of response in the same way. And when I looked at the research, it made sense, because basically we have estrogen receptors in our brain, and before your menstrual bleed, your estrogen levels drop. And it seems to impact how dopamine works in the brain. And in further surveys that were done subsequent to the one I did, which have been done on the Michael J. Fox Insight platform, also been done by Val Hebron, a team in Spain. They sort of replicated the surveys, and they showed that around 40% of women reported that their medication was less effective during this time, the week before their menstrual bleed and the week during their menstrual bleed. So that has huge ramifications for women with young onset Parkinson's. And the reality is that young onset or early onset, they kind of vary in their definitions, but you could say early onset is, certainly under the age of 55. And in terms of menstruation, women menstruate up to an average age of say 51, 52. Some women go on to 55. So if you're diagnosed, in your early 20s, that's a long time for your symptoms to be worse for at least 1 to 2 weeks of every month that you live with Parkinson's. And the reality is there's no clinical guidelines to help women with this issue, because there has been no research done. And this is the reason behind the development of the app that I developed called My Moves Matter. Really, it all stemmed from a digital patient-centered hackathon that I was asked to take part in as a patient during the end of lockdown. It was all online, and basically you had to bring a problem that you wanted to solve using technology. So I brought the idea that I wanted to develop an app where women could track their Parkinson's symptoms across their menstrual cycle, so they could actually show their clinicians that this is really happening. Because the research that we did actually showed that 90% of the neurologists never spoke to the women about this issue, never counseled them about the fact that this is a problem. So the reason behind the My Moves Matter app was a way of giving women a voice to be able to show that what they were experiencing to their neurologist. And then I suppose the next stage was wanting to actually do what we call prospective research. So we have retrospective research, which is a survey, but that's not strong enough evidence to try and build clinical guidelines. So we have to have prospective, which means real world evidence. So we developed the ability within the app for people to track their period, their medication intake, and their symptoms. And I approached University College Cork with the head of neuroscience there, Professor Aideen Sullivan, and said, could we do a study to track women with their menstrual symptoms, their Parkinson's symptoms across the menstrual cycle? And they very, kindly said, yes, we can help you. Had to get funding to get that research done. And we launched it in February of this year. And just recently, we were able to extend the ethics so that we can now have women from all around the world take part in the study, and also women of any age. So we want to actually look at hormonal fluctuations, not only around the menstrual cycle, but also women as they go through the perimenopause and women when they're postmenopause. Because estrogen, we know from all the research, seems to have a protective factor for women. And that's one of the theories behind the fact that men have slightly higher rate of prevalence of Parkinson's than women. Now, it's not hugely different. It's about 60% men to 40% women. But there is something different between the severity of symptoms in women to men. So that study is ongoing. We've approximately just about 140 women now. We need 200 women to take part. So anyone who's going to be listening into this interview, I'd ask them, you've kindly shown the website there, to go onto the mymoosmatter.com website and to join the study, because really it's only by women voting with their feet and doing the research that we can actually start to get the data to give to the researchers to be able to start to see, are there real patterns there? And from that to get clinical guidelines. Because the reality is we know that there are some treatments. So some women are given extra levodopa, which helps with the symptoms. And other women are basically put on the oral contraceptive pill without a break, which means that they don't have a drop in estrogen. And that helps them to get through the worst symptoms. But there's no guidelines about that. So not every neurologist would know that. And because there's no clinical guidelines, they might be a little bit reluctant to give advice without research-based guidance. So that's why we're doing the study. And we're also we're actually going to be launching the French version of the app tomorrow, hopefully, or early this week. And that has really come about because we're looking to do a second pilot study with Professor Elena Morrow, who's the president of the European Academy of Neurology, and she is the PI lead. And we're going to do a specific study on women who are of menstruating age with Parkinson's in 4 neurological centres in France. And so they will have a tracking arm, but they'll also have a treatment arm where they will actually treat the women who will report that they have worse symptoms around their menstrual cycle. So that's very exciting and is yet to come. And that is thanks to a grant that we won, an application to France Parkinson's. So that's coming down the line as well.
Well, congratulations, so many incredible. These are not just things, these are actually groundbreaking in my view, having research out there that's very needed. I don't know if you could share your background. I don't know if you're a medical doctor, but you should be. But maybe you could
Thanks
share.
very much.
Not everybody likes, not everyone loves research, but that's something that has to be done. Even my writing the book, I've written books in criminal justice and the law, but not really in Parkinson, just because I thought this story in my mother's journey was needed. There really isn't a book in the world. I always tell everyone, please challenge me and find one, but from a son who lost their mother due to Parkinson, never seen it, which is something that was sad to me. And that's why I decided to do. And that's why I think your study, your app, and all the work you do so important. There's so many women out there. I can only speak for the US, I'm sure around the world, that feel alone and have these questions. And like you said, they ask their doctor, but no offense to the male doctor, he might not have the expertise, but coming from you and your background and all the incredible people that you work with, it means the world. So I don't know if you could share a little bit about your background, because I know
Yeah.
amazing some of this.
Yeah, no, I suppose, yeah, I do come from a research background. So I did science as an undergraduate in Trinity College in Dublin. And then actually I worked in sales and marketing for 11 years because I couldn't get a job back. when I left college, there was very few jobs in Ireland at the time. That's why many people emigrated. And I was one of those that went to the UK and, as they worked there. But subsequently, I actually retrained as a dietitian. That was actually as a result of my sister, who sadly was diagnosed with stage 4 breast cancer at the time. And, I was just appalled with the lack of kind of evidence-based advice that was been given out to her. So I decided to go back and retrain as a dietitian. I did a master's in the University of Ulster Coleraine. And they were amazing researchers in that university. And that really started my dietetic career, which is now 20 years ago. So with that dietitian background, we're very much, have to go from evidence-based. We have to look at the research. We can't give advice that's based on, just a hunch. We're not allowed, sell supplements, because we're not by profiting from people in terms of, product. It's about actually looking at the evidence around the research. So that's, I suppose, when I started looking at what was happening to me and my symptoms, it just logically, I went to the research to have a look. And I was astounded that there was very little in Parkinson's around this area. And I suppose at the end of the day, it's like in the health service, those who shout loudest, get the care. And unfortunately, with Parkinson's, probably 70% are, we know are over the age of 60. And, people who are sort of over the age of, 80 don't have a voice probably to raise. So I think it's incumbent on us who are younger to actually raise the voices for those who can't. And I kind of feel that other people before me have done it. And so it's my turn to do my bit to raise the voice. There's a Parkinson's diva. Maria DeLone, she did like an awful lot in this area. Sharon Krishner has done with Twitchy Woman, Omatola Thomas, like there's others who have campaigned on the women's trail. And I'm just, picked up the baton and doing my piece in that, and they continue as well to advocate. But I suppose one thing you mentioned there about, and I think it's fantastic that you've written this book about caregiving, because it's a big issue for women with Parkinson's, because they tend to not get the same level of caregiving as a man would with Parkinson's. And that's probably a sort of gender thing, that women tend to go to appointments with their husbands. They tend to be the carer, the shopping, the cooking, all that sort of stuff. The men tend to not, and the research actually shows that women tend to attend Parkinson's appointments with their neurologist more on their own than men do. Also, women with Parkinson's end up needing a formal caregiver sooner than men do. Some of that is to do with the fact that men die before women, their partners, their husbands might die before them. And also women with Parkinson's are known to end up in nursing homes earlier than men do. And a bulk of sort of the family caregiving still falls on a woman, even though she's living with, a very difficult disease for many. So the caregiver journey is actually really important. And in your mum's case, she was very lucky to have yourself as a really strong advocate for her. And, I think that's a really strong role that, family members, not everybody takes it on, but it's a really important role for people with Parkinson's, especially as they progress through the disease.
Yeah, you bring up an important point. I was shocked when I was approached to be a speaker at a big caregiver event, but it was literally called men caregiving, which was non-existent. So when
Yeah,
I was shocked, because I'm like, it's my mother. I don't think I'd be the man I am today if it wasn't for my mother's sacrifices. She was a school teacher. She gave up her whole master's and her career in education to raise me and my brother. And I don't think, again, I would be who I am today if it wasn't for her sacrifice. But it's so if you said, and even a nurse mentioned to me when I was helping her, a lot of men don't step up, which I was shocked. So even today, I
yeah,
don't know. I think we need more men caregivers speaking out and speaking up, but I agree with you.
yeah. I think it's just, it's society, and it's taking, I think things are changing slowly in terms of roles and sharing of roles in terms of, responsibilities. But certainly when you're living with Parkinson's, I think it's really important for your husbands or even, children to understand the impact, say, of hormones. And so there's a lot of discussion at the moment with regard to menopause and the impact of menopause on women with or without Parkinson's. And certainly with women with Parkinson's, a lot of the symptoms of Parkinson's actually mimic or menopause mimic Parkinson's. So a lot of the menopausal symptoms are very similar. So there is a theory that perhaps some women are actually getting a delayed diagnosis because the masking of those menopausal, because it creates anxiety, depression, it can cause, sleeplessness, it can cause, sweating, it can cause brain fog, a lot of the similar symptoms. So women are often put on anti-anxiety medication, which actually is not going to help the Parkinson's symptoms if it's actually Parkinson's. So we do need to explore that whole area as well with regard to the menopause transition, because women who have Parkinson's and go through the menopause transition tend to report that their symptoms are worse afterwards, which would make sense because they've lost their estrogen, which is, neuroprotective. But there's a lot of really beginning to, be interesting research to show that also in terms of men, there are impacts in terms of hormones. So in terms of testosterone, and also things like estradiol or estrogen are in men as well in different quantities. So this is not just about women, it's actually about noticing the differences in women and using those differences to actually look at potential new therapies that could help everybody with Parkinson's.
Thank you. Yeah, I mean, that's some incredible information. I also want to thank you for almost a year ago. It's amazing how quickly the time passes for doing the interview too. And also everyone, please support Women's Parkinson's Project. So hopefully we can have more of a discussion in the future. There's so many exciting things happening that you're doing. And also I would like a whole hour or two if we had on dieting. And I don't know if you're surprised, but I'm fascinated that there's not many people out there talking about diet and Parkinson's. I've done a lot of research myself. I've interviewed over 70 people through the show and over 800 people through interviews online. And I don't think I even have more than one person who talks about nutrition and Parkinson's, even though it's one of the most important things really in the world. I want to thank you again for this interview.
That's definitely my second, one of my passions is obviously the women in Parkinson's, the hormones, but my second passion is around diet and nutrition. And I feel there's a huge unmet need there. So
Yeah.
90% of people with Parkinson's do not have access to dietetic therapy. And I think that's a really missing, and you've probably seen one of my papers, we actually wrote it on the missing piece of the puzzle, which is nutrition for people with Parkinson's. So I'd be happy to come back and talk to you about
Thanks.
that.
And if everyone wants to check out much more information with Richelle, it's at togetherforsharon.com. Click interviews and you'll see it there. I also want to say how amazing she is on social media. So I'm able to, I feel like we're not just family, but I see you more than my family. So it's always amazing. So this, everyone can go also to Instagram and I'm sure Facebook too. But the most important thing right now, August 2024 is about supporting her. Please go to mymovesmatter.com. Take your time, look around. I've been looking a lot before we met and also today, and it's really simple to use. And you can also see the links to Facebook, Instagram, now it's X, and LinkedIn, and you'll see some very valuable, important information. Please also go there and just click here to join the study now. So there's just a lot of things that are very fascinating. Now, maybe we, just for a moment, I'm going to stop sharing. If you could kind of, in a quick way, because I don't want to keep you all night, talk about maybe how critical dieting is, and maybe kind of like a little summary of the area of dieting and nutrition and Parkinson's. Because like I said, only one person I really see ever is talking about. I don't know, maybe you can also touch on why people aren't really bringing it to the forefront like women issues.
I think, part of the problem, the reason why it's not is because dietitians are not part of the multidisciplinary team for Parkinson's. So, OT, physio, and speech are a core part, but dietitians aren't. And I think that's a fundamental flaw in the multidisciplinary care team. Because if it's not there, then people don't think of it. Also, research that I've done, focus groups and surveys show that although people with Parkinson's report diet as being really important for them and they want to get access, they don't ask for a referral. So one of the things I would say is, if you want a service, you have to ask for it. You have to create the ask, and then you are more likely to get the service. In terms of things that people can do, obviously there's a couple of key things. One is in terms of, from a low-hanging fruit point of view, is the interaction of medication with diet. So one of the key things is levodopa is known to be absorbed across the blood-brain barrier at the same point that protein foods are, the amino acids that are broken down from protein foods, such as meat, chicken, egg, fish, milk, dairy. So the advice is to take your medication, which contains levodopa, half an hour before your meals or an hour to 2 hours after your meals. Now that's not going to apply to everyone, but I don't have the time to kind of expand out to the nuances of it. But in the main, that is one key thing. The other thing is constipation is affects 60 to 70% of people with Parkinson's. If you're constipated, your tablet is not going to get where it needs to go, which is your brain. And when it breaks down, it gets absorbed through your gut wall into your bloodstream and gets to your brain. But if you have constipation, that can stop that from happening. Also, constipation can create a buildup of less healthy bacteria, and these bacteria can actually eat your levodopa. So actually not enough of it gets from your your stomach or your gut to your brain. So it's really important to get on top of, making sure you're getting regular bowel movements. The third thing I would say is to follow a Mediterranean style diet. So in essence, it's a healthy diet, but there's particular constituents of a Mediterranean style diet, and that is olive oil, olives, eating plenty of fruit and vegetables, your whole grains, your oily fish, keeping your red meat to, maybe maximum twice a week, and getting things like specifically green leafy veggies and berries are sort of the kind of core constituents of a Mediterranean style diet. So ultimately, there's the three quick sort of tips with regard to diet.
I have to agree. Unfortunately, even some of the writing in my book was about how my mother's gut or stomach was completely destroyed. We had to hire staff almost to keep her at home because she swore or made me swear I'd never put her in a home. But we had to spend $12,000 a month for a few months because she never slept due to the stomach. So we had nurses on staff. Almost it was like something I can, and people don't even, well, unless you're going through it, obviously, but people don't think about the stomach because you're talking about the movement disorder, talking
Yes.
about this kinesia and all the other areas, but then that's even sometimes, I won't say worse, but just as challenging. And the whole show about it, because it was torture. I mean, again, I talk like you about tough topics because I think that we need to enemas and things are not really things that people want to talk about, but they're so important because
Yeah, but you're absolutely right. I mean, I've had a number of young onset women, and I'm sure this has happened for men as well, who manually evacuate their bowels. That's ridiculous. That should not be happening to people with Parkinson's. These are things that should be treated in the community, and no one should have to go through that. They are treatable, they're solvable. And if that is happening to you, I just say to you, please go to your GP or your PCP or your Parkinson's nurse. You've got to tell them that this is happening. And also sometimes people suffer from what we call gastroparesis, which is slow stomach emptying, and that can cause huge problems in terms of nausea, vomiting, and actually a healthy diet in terms of high fiber could worsen that. So, and I suppose as dietitians, we have no problem talking about bowels and all that because it's a huge part of not just Parkinson's, but many different conditions. So it's not to be shy of talking about these things because it really can make your life miserable if you are, so badly constipated or you have gastroparesis. It really, and they are things that can be treated.
and
So, not to be alone in that.
but I was shocked too. I actually had Dr. Dorsey on, Dr. Oken, and a few other experts in Parkinson's disorder as medical doctors. But a lot of them shocked me when they said a lot of individuals diagnosed are taking, vitamins, which is okay, but they don't share that with the medical provider, and that causes major problems because now you're kind of giving medicines like you mentioned, but they're not being balanced because the doctor's not even aware of it. I was shocked when I found that out.
It's common across, we would have seen it in cancer patients as well, where, when you've got what is technically called progressive neurodegenerative disorder, obviously people are going to take matters into their own hands and, try anything and diet is probably one of those things that you can sort of take control of. And so people can take high dose supplements, and they can actually interfere with your medications, or people are taking probiotics off the shelf and actually they can worsen for some people their symptoms. So it's really important that you do discuss with your neurologist what exactly you're on so they can, be sure that it's not causing more problems than benefit. But there's a lot of things that diet and specific nutritional supplements can really benefit. So vitamin B12 would be one that I'd be very, very sort of conscious of looking out for in people with Parkinson's. Also vitamin D deficiency. There would be two core ones. But again, that's where as a dietitian, we look from the evidence base rather than just, on the internet, people are trying to sell us things all the time. They're always trying to sell hope, but sometimes it can cause more trouble than benefit.
I commend you. We've never given a show award out, but if we more, you would be a award winner because some of the work you're doing is just so fascinating and important. I had the honor to speak to Parkinson's Ireland, and I love what everyone out there is doing.
Right.
Just someday I'll have to visit. I hope we get to meet at the next Congress, but so
Yeah,
many.
please God.
Yeah. Now I want to shift a little as we kind of wrap up to a little bit more about you, if you don't mind. You are allowed to skip it if you don't want to respond, but
Sorry.
Yeah, so if you could list 3 words that describe who you are.
Oh my gosh, that's a left fielder. I would say positive, resilient, and happy.
I love that. Thank you. This one's one of my favorites. What is one moment or one most memorable moment that stands out through most of your work with awareness that you could share?
Oh, gosh, there's so many. I think, to be honest, it's when women reach out to me.
Yeah.
I had a woman reach out to me, and she just from Australia, and she emailed, and I was kind of having a bit of a slump in terms of thinking, oh my God, how do I keep going? And sometimes you're trying to get things going. I was having a bit of a moment, and she just emailed me and she said, like, thank you so much for what you're doing, and it's really important, and it's made me look at what I need to do, and that's what makes it for me, is that it makes a difference to somebody. So those moments is what keeps me going.
Thank you. And this is another important question. I wanted to try to bring out the people behind the scenes in your life. Who helps you during times of struggle? I was a caregiver, as you know. What tips could you give those listening? You did mention earlier, but tips for some caregivers.
Yeah, I think I suppose in terms of, there's one thing is, I know a lot of us who are young onset are sometimes, aren't keen on the term caregiver. So often it's a care partner, I think, in that sort of situation. Um, but for me, I suppose at the moment my symptoms are, relatively well controlled, that I don't need huge, caregiving. But I think it's, sometimes as women we can, like the captain of the ship, as the mom of the household and doing everything, is the care partner, my husband, to notice that and sort of to take some of the slack, but sometimes it's hard because us women don't give up responsibility very easily. So I think it's actually having a conversation about how you can share the load, more easily is really important. Um, and I think in terms of who supports me, I suppose, look, it's my kids as well as my husband. But my kids keep me going, because you can't stop with kids. Like, I have a 7-year-old and a 17-year-old, and there's a lot going on in their lives. So I have to keep as well as I can, and they kind of keep me going, because I'm up. I'd say I climb my stairs in my house like 40 times a day. I'm up and down, up and down. Also my dog. I have a dog. He helps me because I have to walk him every morning. So all these things are helping me. And yeah, so that's what I'd say.
But we also send our love to your husband, your family, the dog, and everybody out there, because I think that it's important that I know I wouldn't be able to do this today without the support of my family, but I always like bringing out for even a moment the people behind the
Yeah.
scenes of the beautiful, nice Zoom background you have. So thank
And to
you.
be fair, also in terms of my husband, like he is, because I've been working on this in terms of Mind Moves Matter for like 2 years now, and so he's enabling me to
Mhm.
do this. So that's a huge support for me, is that he's enabling me to do the advocacy that I'm doing, and to hopefully make a difference. And he knows how important that is. So he's very much in the background, but he's an advocate by proxy.
Yeah. I love that. Is there something you might have done differently looking back the past 10 years?
Um, is there something I would have done differently? Um, I think so. I'm not one for kind of looking back. I'm for, trying to stay in the moment. You can't change what's gone behind you, and you can't forecast what's going to happen in the future. So I'm very much for living for the day, and how present and what I can do today, potentially can change tomorrow. But I can't. Yeah. Otherwise, you're just always looking behind your shoulder, always looking, and life goes by. So might as well just enjoy what I do have now.
If you were asked to write a script to a movie about your life story, what would you call it? Mine
That's
moves.
right. Yeah, yeah. I think I love the quote. I don't know who it was by, but it was start where you are, um, do what you can with what you have. I think it's about, you can always start again. Even if you've had a bad day, you can always start again tomorrow. Or even if you're having a bad morning with Parkinson's, you can always potentially start again in the afternoon. Or, do you know, so I think that's for me is really important, that the sun will always rise and there's always another day and another way.
I appreciate it. And also the final question, if you could leave the Parkinson's community today with some words of encouragement, what would they be? And also, how could everyone out there listening reach you?
Well, what I would say, and what My Moves Matter is all about self-care and empowerment. And as a dietitian, it's what I do when I work with, people with all different kinds of chronic diseases. It was always about empowering them to understand their condition and what they could do to take control of that condition. Because no one else can do that. Only you can take that. Or if you're a caregiver, you can help take control to help your loved one live better with the condition. So we can moan about the fact that we've lack of access to care, but there's a certain amount that we can take control ourselves. And I think it's about, because I think with the diagnosis of Parkinson's, many, including myself, the diagnosis is given in what I call a very disabling way. You're told you have a neurodegenerative progressive disorder. But like, diabetes is a progressive disorder, but people are given the diagnosis in a more positive, enabling way. So I think it's about, if you think about it in terms of we're lacking dopamine, you can replace it with medications that help to improve the symptoms. And there are lifestyle, diet and exercise, which we know both potentially slow progression. So there are a lot of things and a lot of hope. And I think with dopamine, it's all about doing the things that you still love. I know lots of people who are given the diagnosis and they just retreat. And that's the worst thing you can do with Parkinson's, is to retreat. So do as many things as you can to stimulate your dopamine to keep well with Parkinson's, would be what I'd say. And to find me, if they, go to mymovesmatter.com, they can contact me through there.
Thank you. And I have a little message for you and everyone listening. We love you. We support you. We care a lot about you, and you're never alone. I, along with Richelle, will advocate for you. And together, I feel our voices are so much stronger. I always say I'm just getting started because even though I'm not, just listening to you talk today, you honestly inspire me so much. You're doing some incredible things, not just in Ireland, but really affecting the US and the world. And you just, in my opinion, a hero to so many, and I'm grateful to be a friend. So I just want to thank you again for your time and all you do. Everyone, please go to My Moves Matter. I'm going to download the app. I recommend you do. It's nothing, you can't hurt by trying. And like Richelle said, each day something new may come, but with that support from the app, I mean, you're going to have some incredible research that we've never had before. And it's really something that was been needed for some time now. So thank you again for your time, for all you do, and look forward someday to saying thank you in person.
Very much, George, for having me on. And just to say, in terms of the app, it's not just for women, it's for anyone with Parkinson's. And it's about you being able to understand your Parkinson's better so that you can ask the questions. And the other thing is, thank you for referring to me as a hero. I'm not a hero. Everyone who's working in the Parkinson community is, in my mind, we're all just trying to find a better way and trying to find solutions for this condition. And I think, as you say, together, we will find answers along with the researchers and the clinicians. I think it's a very positive community for a tricky disease. But I think there is a lot of hope around the corner.
Well, thank you again. And again, I hope this conversation continues because I still feel, even after our talk today, women issues, diet, nutrition are all something that should be, honestly, maybe the number one talk over many other topics that aren't. So thanks for doing your part, but I still am going to say you're here. We'll find,
Thanks a
unfortunately,
million.
we'll have our little argument and that'll be it. And that's a great one. Because there's someone out there, I feel, and the reason we do this show is I don't get anything from it. I don't want anything. If you send me something, I'll send it back, which will cost me more money than it's worth. But we do it for awareness because I wish I had the app. I wish I had you as a friend or even someone out there researching. When my mother went through this, I felt alone as a caregiver. She certainly felt alone as a person diagnosed. And, she passed at a young 69. And in my odd brain, 2024, we should be living past, 85 healthy. So it's,
Yeah.
something that is in my mind, but there's so much positive that has come from the darkness. I've lost my best friend, but made so many more important
Yes.
people throughout the world now that I consider family. So again, I just grateful for your time, friendship, and everyone. Please again go to My Moves Matter, download the app, and support Richelle, not just in that, but all the reading, the material. I'm sure she should have her PhD soon. I have mine. I always say I could send you my dissertation, but it's 400 pages. No one's going to read it. So, but again,
My old professor in the University of Coleraine, she wanted me to do a PhD. She said, "You might as well be doing it for all the
oh,
research you're doing."
yeah, I agree. You
I
might
was
be
like,
able to skip some years and get right in. Maybe an honorary one if we ever build a school. Have you talk? We'll get you one. But again, thank you, and thanks everyone out there listening. This has been another episode of Q&A with Sharon. And it's not going to end here. Like I said, we have so many more conversations. This one was one of the most important, but we still have work to be done, and until we find a cure. So thank you again for your time. Thanks for listening. Please share this, and again, just keep sharing for Parkinson's awareness, and I think we'll be closer to a cure if we keep working together throughout the world, which is really fascinating. And last thing is, I didn't even know that, when I was going through Parkinson's with my mom, I knew there were about 1 million people in the US, but for some reason, we're not trained to think about, wait a minute, we have a whole world out there. So because of the World Parkinson Congress, only 2 years ago, I discovered it. That's how we met, and thankful due to social media, I was able to reach 800 people around the world. But that's something that Parkinson doesn't discriminate. It can affect anyone from Iceland to Australia to New York. So that's why again I feel strongly that we have to be a family in this fight, and we will come closer and have a cure at your door someday soon if we all continue this. So thanks again for your time. We send our love to the family, to you, and to everyone out there in Ireland and around the world. Thanks, everyone.
Civilian George.